Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. This is Emil, and in today's video we're having a look at one of the most exciting stocks in the stock market and definitely one of the most exciting industries out there. And the stock is Virgin Galactic, ticker symbol SPCE, space, and the industry of course is space, aerospace travel. So in today's video we're going to run through what Virgin Galactic actually does, or what it's planning to do, because it doesn't really do anything yet. It's not earning any revenue. After that, we'll look at the space industry as a whole and all the potential revenue streams that could come from the space industry, and some of them are pretty out of this world. Oh my god. Okay, so after that we'll have a look at their competition. So SpaceX and Blue Origin are just some of the names. So we're going to look at how they're different to those companies. After that we'll talk about Richard Branson a bit and whether I think he's the man to be able to pull off such a difficult task. And then finally, the most important, we'll have a look at the numbers and see if it makes sense to invest in Virgin Galactic at this price, in my opinion. Okay, so before we get started, I'd really appreciate if you could smash the thumbs up button. And if you're interested in investing in general, or investing in the stock market, particularly in technology companies, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. So with all that said, let's get straight into the video. Cheers. So Virgin Galactic are the first pure space play to go public that someone like myself can invest in. So that's very exciting. And they went public using a reverse merger. So basically they merged with a company that's already public, and that company is to do with social capital. So owned by Chamath Palihapitiya, if you know him. He's kind of considered almost a modern day Warren Buffett. So he's a fantastic investor. So if he believes in something, I tend to pay attention because I think he's a really bright mind in the current times. So what are Virgin Galactic's plans? Well, Virgin Galactic wants to be the first commercial space line as opposed to airline. And they want to bring, it'll have to be wealthy individuals up into space for about 90 minutes at a time. So this is their main idea at the moment. But there's potentially more revenue streams, but we'll get into that in a minute. But that's their goal at the minute. Is they had planned to bring their first commercial passengers into space this year, but because of the coronavirus, that's not going to happen. So it'll have to be extended out. So one ticket onto one of their planes or their rockets will set you back 250,000, and you'll be able to experience weightlessness and see the Earth from space, which be really, really beautiful, and it'd be kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, and very few people will be able to do it, especially in the beginning. So basically how it works, they'll bring you up on an airplane. The airplane brings up the rocket to about 50,000 feet, and from there the rocket deattaches, and then the rocket engines kick in and brings you up to 250,000 feet. So the great thing about these rockets is that they're reusable. So once you're in the rocket, it fits about 6 people. You do your 90 minutes, your weightlessness, the whole experience. You also have to do a lot of training. So it's actually a multi-day thing. It's not just 90 minutes, but you do a lot of training because they can't just bring people up with no training, because obviously you're going at really, really high speeds. But yeah, once you're up in the air, you've done your bits and weightlessness and you've enjoyed the sights, then you go back down and the rocket actually lands on a runway just like an airplane. So it's reusable, so it's not going to just crash into the sea and that's the end of it. So that's the business model, creating reusable rockets. And the advantage to this is that you can use it on a normal runway, just like with current commercial airplanes. I'm not sure if you've seen SpaceX's reusable rockets, but they're way out at sea and they land like vertically, so that you can really have that in an airport. So those landing pads are way out at sea. So this brings us in nicely to the second potential revenue stream for Virgin Galactic, which would be supersonic flights. So it would be kind of similar to the Concorde, to bring wealthy individuals across the Earth really, really fast. So from Shanghai to New York in under an hour. Now obviously this would be a bit of an expensive flight if you're spending 250,000 just to get for one flight from Shanghai to New York. However, the thought is in time the price will come down as they get better and better at this. And the advantage, as I mentioned, over SpaceX, which is Virgin Galactic can operate in a normal airport, whereas SpaceX would have to have a really noisy rocket right out at sea. And SpaceX's rockets wouldn't really save as much time as Virgin Galactic's, as I'd have to take a boat out at sea, out to the landing pad at sea, go up in a rocket, re-land also at sea, and then take another boat to New York or Shanghai, whichever's on either end. And also this would be really, really noisy, and maybe it would prove to be more difficult to get regulatory approval. So Virgin Galactic have actually partnered with NASA to develop this supersonic speed commercial flights for transatlantic flights or long distance flights across the Earth. Okay, so let's move on to the actual space industry and potential revenue streams for the future, or revenue streams are already in effect now but will grow in time. So firstly, a lot of 3D printing. 3D printing is much easier in zero gravity. So for really expensive things that need to be 3D printed really accurately, for example, 3D printing human organs is really much easier in space when there's no gravity effects. And creating more energy efficient fiber optics is also much benefited in space. And fiber optics are basically what is used to carry the internet and all information across the Earth. So it's a really huge industry, and they're already being carried out up in space, and this could only accelerate in the future. However, there is a lot of competition in this space, and I'm not sure Virgin Galactic might not be the first choice to be bringing astronauts and equipment up to the International Space Station, but potentially, we'll see. So Virgin Galactic, just like Virgin's other companies, wants to have a lot of customer service. So I foresee that Virgin Galactic would be better served at serving customers rather, or like the general public, than serving industries or governments, like the way SpaceX or Blue Origin are going after. So potentially bringing people up to orbiting hotels, which are theorized in the future and is already being worked on at the moment. I think things like space mining, which will be a $1 trillion industry, it would also be better served by SpaceX or Blue Origin or NASA rather than Virgin Galactic, because Virgin Galactic is just kind of going after the low orbit, cheap flights, and Blue Origin are kind of going after the moon landings. Even SpaceX is theorizing that they'll be able to bring customers for pass by of the moon, and in the very far future for year-long trips to Mars, etc., etc. I think Virgin Galactic is just going after the initial surge of demand to just go into waitlist lists and see the Earth from space. So the commercial space market is expected to grow from 385 billion today to 1.5 trillion by 2040. So there's plenty of room to grow. So if you're interested in this stock, it's really a long-term play that you're looking at, not a quick buck in the next few years, because I don't think they're going to be really rolled out to their maximum capacity for a long while, because the things that they're going after are extremely difficult to pull off, and there's always problems and delays in this industry. Going to space is one of the hardest, if not the hardest things humans have done. It's really hard to leave Earth's gravitational field. So Blue Origin and SpaceX, at the moment, Blue Origin and SpaceX are kind of working more towards providing launches for governments or experiments, or having labs or satellites going up into space. They're doing the launches. Most of the, like 70% of the revenue from space revenue at the moment is from satellite launches, or people who want to get a satellite up into the air. So that's what SpaceX and Blue Origin are going after, and Boeing and Lockheed Martin and NASA. That's what they're all doing at the moment. Whereas Virgin Galactic are kind of going after their own little niche. They're not really so interested in going after the satellite industry. So, do I think Richard Branson is the man for the job? Well, Richard Branson has businesses in pretty much every single industry in the entire world. Virgin has basically gone into every single industry, has created a lot of successful businesses, but there's also quite a few failures. So, at the end of the day, we know Richard Branson is an excellent businessman. The problem is he doesn't really have the technical abilities. So, like Elon Musk knows exactly what's going on. Everything that happens at SpaceX, Elon Musk will stop every engineer and question him for an hour or two Elon Musk will stop every engineer and question him for a while until he really understands what the engineer knows about whatever they're working on. So Elon Musk knows everything that's going on, and he's kind of the mastermind of SpaceX and Tesla. He knows exactly what's going on and how to fix every single problem. Whereas Richard Branson, he provides the money, and the business know-how. And Virgin Galactic have already successfully gone into space twice. Like in the video I showed you, they've already orbited space just with their pilots with no passengers, but they've shown that they can do it. So now all that matters is bringing passengers next time. However, they did have a crash, so it's pretty risky in the fact that if they bring passengers up and there's a crash and passengers die, like that's going to really impact their sales and potentially put them out of business. No matter how you look at this, it's an extremely speculative stock. So finally, let's have a look at the numbers and see whether it makes sense to invest in the company right now. So currently they have $400 million in cash on their balance sheet. So they got that when they merged with Social Capital, which had 800 million. They've been kind of just burning cash at a crazy rate, trying to test everything. And they're going to continue doing this for the foreseeable future. They're burning cash pretty quick. And another factor that might put you off the stock is Richard Branson actually sold quite a large number of shares of Virgin Galactic to bail out his Virgin Atlantic business, as in like, you know, his airline business, because that was going under because of the coronavirus. So he had to sell shares of the Virgin Galactic business on the public market to kind of save his other company. So that's not a great look for potential investors, and that's what brought one of the reasons the stock price has dropped so far since it topped out at $45. Now it's hovering around $15. So it IPO'd around $10, went all the way up to $45, and now it crashed all the way down to like $7, but now it's like $15. So at the moment, 67% of the stock is held by insiders, which is mostly Richard Branson. There's 19% held by institutions, and the rest by people like you and me. So Richard Branson still has a significant stake in the business. So he does have a big stake in the business, which I always like to see. Not so much when the CEO has a big stake, but definitely if insiders like the board or actual workers have a big stake in the business, that's really good to see. And recently, some of the workers and the boards have been buying up the stock since it crashed. So there's been a bit of insider buying, which is always a really good sign for stocks. So, but obviously they have pretty much no revenue or earnings. The only revenue they've gotten is from some small engineering tasks, but they've also sold some deposits for seats on their commercial space flights. So they've sold 8,000 deposits, and these deposits are fully refundable $1,000 deposits that reserves your seat on one of these space flights in the future. So that gives them 80 million in cash. And if all these people followed through and paid up the remaining $249,000, that would give them 100 million in revenue, which for a $3 billion company isn't enormous at all. And the likelihood of all those people following through is also pretty low. There's no way to know exactly how many of those potential passengers will fork out the next $249,000 if they want a seat on these flights, because it's a fully refundable deposit. But I'd say maybe a third of them will pay up. That's just a complete guess. So I like that fully refundable deposit tactic. Tesla used it with the Cybertruck, and it basically just gives the company a lot of free cash that they don't have to pay any interest on. Just gives them cash now that they can use to grow their business or advance their business without adding any debt to their balance sheet at all. So it's a really good idea. However, the problem is if they don't succeed, or a lot of these people want their $1,000 back, they need to find that $1,000 somewhere. At the end of the day, they have a pretty good balance sheet, well, a very good balance sheet. 480 million in cash, very little debt. So let's have a look at their total addressable market. So I just looked up the total number of millionaires in the world. So this is my estimate of the amount of revenue they could potentially generate from their commercial spaceflight business. Now this is a complete back of the napkin speculation. There's no real way to value this company and no way to ascertain how many people will actually be interested in spaceflight. So I'll run you through what my estimates are. So to be able to afford 250,000 spaceflight, I think you'd have to be at least a millionaire to be able to reasonably be able to afford to go to space. There's no way if you have less than $1 million, you're gonna fork out $250,000. And if you have $1 million and you really want to go to space, maybe you would come up with $250,000. I think that's like the minimum amount. So in the entire world, there is 50 million millionaires. So I just guess maybe 1 in 1,000 of these millionaires will want to go to space or will sign up for this. So 1 in 1,000, that's just complete speculation. So you input the amount of numbers that you know, that the amount that you think would want to go. So this could be way more or this could be way less. It's up to you to kind of come up with your own conclusions. But I'm kind of going for what I think is a slightly conservative guess, that out of every 1,000 people who could afford this trip, one person would fork out the 250,000 to go into space. So that gives us a total of 50,000 customers paying 250,000, which gives us 12.5 billion in revenue for these flights. Now, not all these millionaires are going to go into space every single year. So because they're not going to go every single year, let's just say 1 in 10 will go each year. So over 10 years, they'll get to 12.5 billion. So that will give them 1.25 billion each year in revenue, which gives them a price to sales ratio of 2 at the current market cap, which would be a fair market cap if this was what they were generating right now. But this is still a complete moonshot on speculation if they can get these numbers. However, it just goes to show that if everything works out, the company is definitely not extremely overvalued if things work out like the way my calculations have said. Because the price to sales ratio for something that exciting of 2 is definitely fair valued. However, they definitely haven't got to this stage yet at all. So just to keep that in mind. So what do I think is going to happen in the near future? There's no way to know at all, of course, but because Virgin Galactic have been selling shares and there's still a large number of shares held by insiders, I think there's still going to be more shares issued to the public. So I don't think the stock price is going to go to the moon anytime soon. I think it's going to be pretty bumpy and kind of going sideways between, like, I don't know, $30 and $7 for the next number of years. And then eventually we're going, if everything works out to plan for Virgin Galactic, then we're going to see a step function rise to some serious revenue. Once they start making some serious revenue, we're going to see a really speedy increase. If that happens, if everything works out as planned, it's going to be a few years down the line anyway, but it's really going to be quick. It's going to be a jump just like Tesla did from the $250 range to the $750 range. And the reason for that is because Virgin Galactic is really heavily shorted. So if they unveil that they can make this work and make revenue, and there's a lot of demand for this product or for this service, all those shorts are going to have to cover, and that can really send a stock price soaring really quick. But I personally think this is a long way out. So if you want to invest at these kind of smaller levels, I think you have plenty of time. If you're a swing trader, I think this is also going to be really bumpy in the next few years. But I think it's going to go from, $10 to $40 stock range. It's going to jump up to like $100 to $200 stock range, or in the hundreds of dollars in a step function jump. It's not going to just slowly appreciate, in my opinion. Again, I just want to reiterate that this is a very dangerous stock. There's a huge number of risks involved in the stock. They're burning through an enormous amount of cash really fast. And what they're trying to do is extraordinarily difficult. So there's huge potentiality of failure. And Richard Branson, like, not every company he has created has been successful. So betting on the most difficult business that he's ever created that definitely comes with a lot of risks, but there is definitely a potentiality for big rewards, especially when you're looking 10 to 20 years out. If this company is still around, there's a huge industry there. There's a enormous industry there in the space industry, and I don't think people even realize how enormous this industry will be. Okay, finally, what am I doing in regards to this stock? Well, I just want to reiterate that this is not financial advice, and this stock is like an extremely speculative stock and risky stock. However, I do think this is a good spec play stock. I think I will pick up a couple of shares at these $15 price tag and keep an eye on it over the next number of years, and if it drops below $10 again, I'll probably pick up a few more shares. However, I'm not going to make this more than 1 to 2% of my portfolio. The only factor that would make it a larger position in my portfolio, once they fully prove that they can bring customers up and that there's demand for these space flights, obviously the stock price will jump, but my confidence in this stock will also jump. So I'd probably invest more at that time. So at the moment, I'm looking to make a very, very small initial position in the stock and keep an eye on it over the next number of years. However, I definitely don't recommend putting the house into this stock, not until at least we see some proof of concept and proof of being able to scale up and bring lots of customers up to space frequently enough to make this business profitable. So I'm definitely going to hold my shares for the very, very long term, as I think the space industry in 20, 30 years, because I'm only 20 years old, 24 years old, I'm in my 20s. So in 20, 30 years time, I think the space industry will be enormous comparison to what it is now. And I don't think people really realize all the potentiality that the space industry has. So for that reason, I don't really care if I'm buying the stock at $15 or $10 or $30, because I think this stock in the very, very far future, if everything goes to plan, will be in the hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars per share. So it's a bit of a moonshot stock. It's a speculative stock, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong. But if everything goes right, I could see some great rewards. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about Virgin Galactic. Please let me know what you think about Virgin Galactic in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, I'd hugely appreciate a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, make sure to subscribe. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Pretty exciting, pretty cool industry anyway. So maybe I'll do some more in the future if SpaceX eventually goes public, or Starlink does a spin-off and has an IPO. But for now, that's all I wanted to say. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.